hiring new employees, team members, let's face it, it really sucks. It's a lot of work. And I say it sucks because there's a lot of, filtering that goes through the process, and there's a lot of dance, and there's a lot of uncertainty. Now, it doesn't suck because that means that you're growing. That means that you're getting good people on your team. That means that your business is doing something right. But it sucks because you have to go through that process. Well, what I've done is I've interviewed Ugis Balmaks. Now, Ugis has a company called Recruiter Mill. And in this episode, you're going to learn a 7-step process for hiring people. He's laying it all out. There's no course for you to buy or anything like that. This is just the 7 steps that has worked for him. He has had a successful company. It was a 7-figure business. He's really good at working with contractors, especially in like the Eastern Bloc area. So if you are looking for developers, customer support, others, this is a really good episode for you. But, even if you have a brick and mortar business and you're looking to grow, this is going to be helpful because you're going to be able to pull those principles out. A few things that stood out to me on this episode was the importance of getting the people that you're interviewing to run tests and see if they are a fit. We're going to dive into this episode. Ugis was a great interview. What also was really insightful for me is that you need to put together the right processes and procedures to make this happen. We'll have a link to his website inside the show notes. If you want to have a consultation with him, again, he's making that free so that you can find a person that's going to help you get the right team members in your business. So let's hear from Ugis.
Hi, I'm Ugis. I'm the founder of Recruiter Mill, and we help online businesses hire A players.
So let's first start out and tell us, who is Ugis Balmaks?
Absolutely. Yeah. And first of all, I'm super happy to be on. I checked out your podcast a few times or in a few episodes, and I really love what you're doing here. So, but yeah, about me, I used to own a business that was in the online space, and it wasn't information, and we taught people how to take better photos with the iPhone. And believe it or not, we were quite successful commercially. And to get to that stage, we really had to grow our team and really take care of hiring. And when I sold my shares in the business, I was kind of thinking, what should I do next? Because it's fun to read all the books that you want to be reading. It's fun to play all the chess that you want to be playing. But after a while, you kind of get antsy and you want to start doing things again. And I was helping a few friends of mine with their hiring. And eventually we got to a place where I even did kind of an interview for my friend for his business, just to show him how it's done. And he said, I wish there was someone that could just do this for me. And that's pretty much how my company was born and how I started out in helping online businesses hire A players for themselves.
That's great. Did you start out as an A player in your previous business and start out hiring A players, or was there a learning curve to that for you?
Oh, there was a huge learning curve. So we had a few just atrocious hires, and there were people who were straight up stealing from us. So they weren't that atrocious. But over time, we did get better, and we kind of improved. And at first we realized, okay, we can't have these people who are basically criminals. We need to be a little more strict about who we're bringing in. And we introduced a thorough interview process, and we got some people who are great personalities, but they were not great workers, at least not in those roles that we were hiring for. And over time, we also figured out that part where how to check for the skills that people have and how to actually get enough people interested in the position. So we were able to pick people who are the best, both at the skill side of the job and also kind of the personality fit and what they bring to the table. But yeah, that took several years. And I think by the end of my 5th or 6th year at the company, I felt pretty confident there, but the first few years, they were just awful.
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone that's listening can resonate to how, at the very beginning, there's a lot of things you just don't know. And it takes a lot of doing wrong. And, you get some of the things right that it, provides fuel for the business to live. You mentioned people stealing from you. What were some of the other things that happened that you were able to fix?
Yeah, so there was that's an extreme example, of course, and actually not that many people go through that sort of an extreme example. But there were other kind of more subtle things where if we're an information blog and we were teaching, our audience was older. So if we're teaching older people technology, then everyone on the team has to understand technology really well and have to be able to explain it. And we happened to hire someone to be our editor, so kind of one of the major explainers in the company, if you will. And she just wasn't good with technology, and it never crossed our mind, being like millennials that we are, that it's even possible. But it was, and that's kind of was like one realization. Okay, that's actually something we need to check for. Or there was another person that had worked with Facebook ads a lot and had worked in all types of different agencies and seemingly had done a good job. But we never put their skills to the test before we hired them. We kind of relied on the resume and what their previous supervisors were telling us. And yeah, we never tested it ourselves. And that was the huge mistake. And that was super costly. So these are the sort of mistakes, and some are obvious and some are more subtle, and that you kind of iron out over time.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, today's conversation, what we're going to do, and it was great for you to paint those pictures. We're going to walk you as a listener through a formula that he follows that has proven to work so that you don't have to learn the mistakes yourself. And I think both of us having owned businesses, we can either learn mistakes ourselves, which we're always going to do, but we can accelerate the process by learning from others so we don't have to go through some of the things that really don't matter. So let's start out. Will you explain what the formula is? And then there are 7 steps for going through this process. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. And before we even get into the practicalities, one thing I want to kind of tell people or explain is that it's good to know the practicalities and then kind of how to follow them. What I think is even more important is to know the reasons why they're there and what are we checking for and what it is that we have to bring to the table as business owners to make sure that it's there before we even bring anyone on. And that's kind of the hidden side of the formula that we'll be talking about. So I'll explain both sides, both the practicalities and kind of maybe the psychology or the deeper meaning. And that's something I appreciate as a podcast listener. So I hope our listeners will as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's first let's lay down the psychology of this first. And what that means is why a person should be looking at this conversation and how it impacts. And let's get inside their head, and then we'll dive into those pieces.
Yeah. So I think any business owner or anyone that I've talked to, the kind of dream is that they have this nice productive asset that's kind of generating whatever it is, income or even wealth for them. And they wish they could put it on kind of autopilot. And that is possible. It is hard work and it takes many years, but it's entirely possible. But for it to be possible, you have to kind of start with the foundations and do all those things properly. And the only way how people have done it in the past, and the only way that's proven and reliable, is building a very solid team, being super selective about who you bring on, especially when it's your first few hires, because these are the people that will define what your company is really. So that's why I want to be so kind of specific and so pedantic even about how I'm hiring, because it's just so important, because that's the end in mind, that's to have a business that's productive on its own. But if I don't set the right foundations, it never will be. So that's why it's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you don't do this, listeners, you have just created a miserable job that you will never get out of.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And if you do this, you have an asset that is valuable beyond what you can see currently.
Awesome. So the first step is to define the ideal candidate. So before you write a job ad, before anything else, you need to know who you're looking for. Kind of common mistake there is you can both go too wide and expect too much from a person, or you can be too narrow and kind of like give them this one narrow responsibility that's not really helping you grow. And a good kind of rule of thumb there is the size of your business. So generally, the bigger your business, the more narrow you can be with the job descriptions and what you expect of people. They can specialize in one small thing. Whereas if you're building your team for kind of from the ground up, you want in general, you want people to be more of a kind of generalists and able to do a few things, because there's usually just not enough work for specialized work. Usually they need to do a few things, and that's kind of what you pay attention to. And the other thing that's super important in when you're defining the ideal candidate is making sure it's real and it exists in the world. Because I've talked to a few business owners that think, okay, I want this person to do some link building and then customer support and then maybe some sales on top of it. But then every time you add a qualifier to the person, what they need to know and what experiences they need to have, the pool of candidates just kind of narrows. And if you add 5 or 6 of these qualifiers, then it's basically 0, or it's maybe just yourself. And that's, of course, not a realistic solution. And a huge reason for this, and what my entire approach is based on, what I encourage other people to follow as well, is that in these sort of first few steps, when you're thinking about a job, you want to bring in as many qualified people in as possible, so that are interested in your job ad. And kind of what I like to use is kind of a direct response approach to job ads. So making people really interested, the right kind of people, of course, and then narrowing them down over time. To be able to do that, you need to understand who it is that you're looking for, where to look for them, what sort of things speak to them. The basis of that is defining who you're looking for.
Okay, yeah, and that's imperative. So on the who, you're looking at the skill sets, what those people may have, at what stage, and I know we're going to get into the interviewing and the filtering and all of that, but are there certain things that you're specific on understanding who the person is besides skills, listing out, oh, I want someone that is a problem solver. Oh, someone that can do X, Y, and Z, behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want just skills. You also want kind of the fit, or more the softer skills, if you will. And an awesome way to do this and kind of figure out who it is that you should be looking for is list down all the people that you worked with in the past and understand why it worked out or why it didn't work out. And you'll see, okay, this person, I worked with them, they were awesome in these 3 specific ways. That was their kind of special attribute. I wish everyone on my team were like that. And then you can kind of understand, okay, this is actually something I should be looking for throughout the process. Or, of course, the opposite, where okay, this cannot happen again. And this is the reason why they didn't work out. And especially if you have a few bad experiences like I did, the list gets bigger, and you see patterns almost immediately. You kind of see what it is that you really like and what are the things that you really dislike. And that's just so powerful for understanding not only what's like the average business needs, but what your specific business needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you're casting a wider net, taking the direct response route in many ways. What do you do from there?
So then when I've understood what sort of people I'm looking for, I'm trying to understand how to talk to them. So a very kind of broad example that many businesses will understand is customer support agent. So my first Google is what sucks about being a customer support agent, and I read a few blog articles and I kind of understand what it is that people really dislike. Of course, what's awesome about being in customer support, and I read a few articles there, and it could work for anything. And like recently, I hired for a logistics coordinator, which I knew nothing about, but kind of understanding what people in logistics love about the job and what they hate about the job. You can create an ad that really speaks to them. First of all, it has a hook. So when you talk to the right kind of person, you can identify them immediately. So they know, okay, I should be really paying attention to this ad. So if it's customer support, oftentimes I started my ads by, let's be honest, most of the customer support jobs kind of suck. And that is the reality for many people in customer support. And if I'm able to start in this way that immediately speaks to people, they will pay attention to what I have to say next. Because if I don't catch them within a few seconds, they'll just move on to the next ad and someone else will hire them. So that is so important in this step of the process.
That totally makes sense. So you're, as direct response marketers say, you're entering into the conversation that's already in their mind.
That's exactly right. Yep. The other thing you kind of want to pay attention to, and the other thing that's kind of this hidden thing that maybe many employers don't think about, I certainly didn't when I was starting out, is that your offer and what you bring to the table has to be a good offer to someone who's reasonable, someone who's smart, basically someone you want to have on your team. So that's why in your job ad, you're explaining the benefits and why they would want to join you. It's not what we're looking for, this is what we need, and then like maybe a list of 5 generic benefits. Most of the copy that I write is all benefits and kind of explaining why this is an awesome opportunity for you. And there people usually look for something that really helps their career and how they can help your company grow. These are the 2 major factors. And I didn't expect that. I didn't think people would care as much about building something, but they really do. And I encourage everyone to include that in their job ads.
Yeah, absolutely. What you just touched on there is something that not a lot of people talk about. And for you as a listener, the reason why this is important, and it's actually more important than most people realize, is that because you have hired so many people, you've become more aware of a secondary language. And so what happens, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from the people I've hired, your B and C players are the ones that care about what are the benefits, what's the rate, that kind of stuff. Oh, here's the skill set, here's the job. Your A players, they're not approaching this as, hey, I'm just taking my time and putting in X amount of hours a day. They're approaching it as, I want something that's going to transform my career, something that's going to elevate me. And so I would assume that's the same thing.
I'm nodding as you're talking. That's absolutely correct. And it is job usually is something that people spend 8 hours of their day for. So that's more than a third of the entire day. So they care about what they do in that time, at least the people that you really want on your team. So if you can be authentic and really explain where the company is, how their contributions will fit into what you're building with the company, the right kind of person will resonate with that, and they will see, yes, this is the one company that actually cares about explaining this, whereas all the other ones that follow the same format.
All right, passing the sniff test so far, so we're good. What's next in this formula?
Okay, so again, the bigger idea is to bring in as many people as possible into your kind of recruitment funnel, similar to a marketing funnel. And what's critical now is to put your job ad on the right, your job ad on the right job board. And here, kind of my personal experience when I was also starting to figure this out is I really researched what I needed. And in this case, it was a developer. I wrote an awesome job ad that later people commented and said, okay, finally someone gets it. And this is the company I want to work for if this is how you see it. But I posted it on a job board, and over 2 weeks, 3 applications came in. And obviously that's just not enough. What we see now that I've kind of figured out a little bit more is that you need at least a few hundred people to apply until you get someone that you actually really want to hire and that you're really excited about. And the problem was, of course, that I was posting in my local job board in Latvia, where I'm from. It's a small country. And what I did instead, when I realized, okay, this is not going to work, I posted on one of the remote job sites. My favorite one, and I'm in no way affiliated with them, but I just love what they do. Is called We Work Remotely. And for many positions, especially if you work online and if you have a remote team, this is where I'd go, and would be my starting point. And then I saw, okay, the same job ad, I didn't change a thing. I brought in hundreds of applications every week, and we could choose an awesome person, basically. So that's the sort of difference the right job board can make. So that's what you want to be going for here.
And so are you focusing, it sounds like you're switching what most people do, because see, a lot of people, they're trying to go to Fiverr or Upwork or some other platform. And what you're doing is you're actually owning the entire experience instead of going to one of those platforms. Is that correct?
Yes, that's one consideration. The other consideration is kind of what sort of relationship am I looking for? And again, I'm trying to build a business, and what I'm going for is someone who will stay with me for many years because they will love working with me and I will love their work. And people on Fiverr, they're usually looking for these short-term freelance gigs, and that's the kind of model they've chosen. Nothing wrong with that, but it's just not for me if I'm trying to build a strong team. I'm not trying to hire someone every 6 months. I'm trying to hire someone once. course, things happen in life, and occasionally I have to look again. But I want someone for years, and then I go to these full-time job sites, and that's kind of why I choose those over Fiverr or Upwork.
Okay, so you've now figured out the formula, who it is. You've got a massive pool of candidates. Now you have to go through and you have to start filtering.
Yes, absolutely. And so now that you've had many of them, you kind of need to be efficient about how you approach this, because it's super easy to have hundreds of candidates and either spend way too much time looking at each individual application, or some people just give up and they're like, okay, this is overwhelming, and then you don't end up hiring anyone. So what you want to do here is have kind of a nice streamlined process. And a big thing for that is having an application form that actually works and serves you and serves the candidate. Because most of the time people ask for some details, cover letter, resume, and that's pretty much it. What I do is I always ask custom questions and things that can be copied from someplace else. And many times I just have to check for English. I have to check for attention to detail. And you'd be surprised how many people are not able to follow basic instructions. And the kind of very harsh truth is that most unemployed people, they are unemployed for a reason. And I don't like to talk in generalities at all. But on average, this really is true. Of course, you can find awesome people that happen to be unemployed, but as a group, on average, they are less professional, less reliable, maybe, than people with jobs. Otherwise, they would have jobs, right? So then you have to be more harsh with how you filter and kind of make sure you really get the best out of this group that's is not leaning the right way, if you will, for your needs. And so what you do is when someone's application is coming in, you can, first of all, you check for length. So if they only written a few sentences, that means they haven't show that they're interested enough. So that's pretty much an easy rejection. If they have English mistakes, if they have a bunch of grammar mistakes, if they haven't, if they're not following the structure that you laid out, all of those are signs that they're not able to follow instructions well. And that's not that sort of person you want on the job, because if they are not able to follow instructions now, what are the odds they'll be able to follow instructions later when they have to do actual meaningful tasks for the business? So this is a harsh thing, but it's something you have to do to kind of save your time. But once you have that, then you're able to move much faster and kind of filter people really fast. But the good ones, you'll kind of, something will catch your eye and you'll spend a little more time on their application, and they'll many times be worth it.
So you're mentioning that they're going to fill out a form. Is this as simple as, could one of our listeners, use a Google form, or is it going to be more robust, a type form, jot form? What does that look like?
So I actually mostly use Google Forms, and they seem to perform better than like a fancy applicant tracking software form, because I think it signals to the candidate that, okay, this is not like a big corporation that's filtering through thousands of applications, even though that's how you're setting up your funnel. But Google Form kind of signals to them, okay, these are like easygoing folks, and they're not, the process is not going to be too hard, which is partially wrong, because you are putting them through all these steps. At least I am. At the same time, I have made sure that it is easy enough, and I'm only asking what's necessary. But Google Forms is a good way how to set this thing up, because it's easy to do and it's unintimidating.
Yeah, absolutely. And depending on your account, it can be free unless you're on the G Suite, which is great for our listeners as well. So what is next in that process? So do you go deeper into filtering, or are you starting to take next steps?
So once someone's had a good application, the next thing we ask them to do is to do a test job. And once again, the deeper reason here is that it is the best predictor of how they're going to perform on the actual job. So writing a decent application is kind of or submitting an application can be a negative predictor. So if someone's done an awful job, they're not going to be good. But if someone's done a good job, you can't tell yet. Similarly, it's actually true with performing on the interviews. So if someone's awful in an interview, more often than not, they're not going to be good on the job. But it's not, if someone's great on an interview, that it doesn't mean that they'll be great on the job. But on a test job, where you actually give them a test, they'll be doing day in and day out in their role. That's when you can tell, okay, this person knows what they're doing, or they don't know what they're doing. And yeah, it's the number one predictor, and that's the step I actually love the most of the entire process.
Okay, that's it. That's really cool. And why going through the test job versus, let's use the example of a writer, looking at one of the pieces that they've written best versus a test job?
So there are a couple of things to it, and one is that every company or every website, they have their own kind of way how they like to do things, and you want to make sure that the person you're hiring, you're not hiring them just as a writer, you're hiring them as a writer for your business or customer support agent, developer, whatever it is. So you want to check that they will actually fit in with whatever process you are following. The other thing is that you don't know how much time they spend on it. You don't know how much help they had if someone else edited it. So here you kind of level the playing field for everyone. And it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's impossible to fake, but it's much easier to create a better impression for like something you had a lot of time to polish and and get a lot of help with, as opposed to something you have a few days for and you do in a few hours.
Yeah, you nailed it exactly. That's exactly what it is. We see this happen all the time where, you're hiring a creative and you see their portfolio, but when it comes to testing, then it's like, like they put their portfolio together of like these last 3 years of their best stuff, and then it's them to do it and realize that maybe they were just a junior on the team, or they just only did a little piece of it, but the creativity came somewhere else.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And if our listeners are taking one thing away from this entire conversation, is that you should test your employees before you hire them. It's one step you absolutely can skip, because it is the single best predictor of how they're going to perform. So whatever, if you don't follow any of our other advice, please follow this one, because it's just so worth it.
Absolutely. What's next in your formula?
So the sixth step is thorough interviews, and kind of the idea behind this is that when you're hiring someone, usually you invest, I think, in the hundreds of hours in kind of onboarding them, showing them the job, and kind of introducing to everyone on the team, performance reviews, meetings, whatnot. And wouldn't it make sense to spend a few hours upfront to get to know them before both of you really invest all this time into this affair that's which would be a job in this case? So what I'd like to do is have a couple of interviews. One is a regular screening check where you kind of make sure that you're aligned about the expectations, that everything is understood. You get some information that will help you in the next stages. But the major interview, it's called top grading, and usually it takes about 3 hours. And you go through every single job the candidate has had in the past. And I always have to explain to candidates why we're doing this, why it takes 3 hours. They've never seen this before. But it is something so worth it, because what's 3 hours compared to hundreds of hours later on that you could potentially just waste. And that's kind of how I explain it. And a major thing here is to you're not trying to trick the candidate and kind of ask gotcha questions. You're trying to genuinely get to know them and really learn about them. And going through their past experiences is the best way I've found to do it. So if you want a really solid guide on doing these sort of interviews, Google top grading, Google the book Who by Jeff Smart, and that will take you in much more detail. But yeah, this is the kind of golden standard process that I see many companies follow. And once they start doing this, they never go back. So why don't you try it as well?
Absolutely. I have top grading in my library at home, and it's a thick book. What I'll say is listen to this podcast episode more thoroughly than have it. It's a very dry read, but it's great.
So if top grading is the that is true. So top grading is actually not the book you want to read. It's the method you want to follow. But the book you want to read is Who, and that's a really nice short read. And it's by Jeff Smart, and it's created by the same authors. or I believe they at least collaborated,
Yeah, Smart
but
wrote the other one.
it's much more digestible. So if you're picking between these two, definitely go for Who.
Okay, so there, my read that's back from, oh man, when I first did, it's well over a decade ago. So we'll check out that and make sure to put that in the notes. Now, the seventh step in the formula, what is that?
Yeah, so the final step and the final step that also candidates go through is reference checks. And there are a couple of things you want to do here. So one is it's kind of a mechanism to ensure honesty throughout the process. And we mentioned this basically from the get-go, from the first screening call, that there will be reference checks. And we ask some information about their past supervisors. And kind of if you know that it's coming in the end, you're not going to have the feeling that, oh, I could like embellish some stuff or make some stuff up, because what if they ask this, then I'm definitely not getting the job. So it's kind of the mechanism to ensure complete honesty, which is what we expect from the candidates. And no one's perfect, by the way. Everyone has some sort of blemish, something that didn't go right. And we also encourage candidates to share that, because we have enough experience and enough understanding that no one's perfect and these things happen. So we can't expect perfection, but we definitely expect honesty. And this is kind of the way to ensure that. And the other thing you're looking for here, and why you're doing this, is that you want to be curious about the candidate and learn about them. And kind of by this stage, usually you will take them onto your team, but you want to know that kind of their what's the word?
Idiosyncrasies.
Yes, that's right. So yeah, you wanna learn about the candidates and kind of know what's their working style, what they're good at, what they're not so good at, what sort of tasks you should give them, and what sort of tasks you shouldn't give them, and that's best learned from their past supervisors. So that's why you get in touch with them. And one practical thing that many people don't like reference checks, and they think, okay, this is going to take a lot of time and this is going to be hard. One thing that really helps is that you ask the candidate to arrange them. And it's also another input for you to see how resourceful they are, how fast they do this, and if there are any problems in the process, because that's basically the first task that you're giving them outside of the test job. And if you ask them to do it and they do it fast, that's a good sign.
There's a lot of things that we covered in this interview. If you wouldn't mind, just highlighting again those 7 steps, listing out what those are, and that way our listeners can understand clearly and have it packaged, so they can say, okay, I'm on step 1, I'm on step 2, step 3, etc.
Of course, yeah. And if the listeners want to kind of have them written down, they can head down to my website. It's recruitermill.com, and they'll be there. But the steps are: number 1, define the ideal candidate. So this is where you understand who you're really going for, who you're looking for. Number 2 is creating a killer job ad and kind of making your opportunity, the one you're presenting, really appealing to the right sort of, or the kind of person you're looking for. Number 3 is to post this job ad on tried and true job boards, and where people that you're going for actually hang out, where they're looking for jobs, and the right kind of people, the people that want full-time jobs, if that's what you're going for. Number 4 is kind of strict applicant filtering, particularly on the application form and when the applications are coming in. Because if you've done everything else right, you'll have a lot of applications to go through. Number 5 is creating test jobs and making sure that people actually can do the job before you hire them. And that's the most important step by far. Number 6 is conducting thorough interviews and really learning about the candidates and getting to know them and investing a few hours, but it will pay off in the long term. And number 7 is reference checks to kind of tie it all together, ensure honesty in all the previous steps, and also learn a little bit more about the candidate from their past supervisors.
That's so succinct. I love it. For you as a listener, here are your options. Depending on the size of your business, you may be a smaller operation and you're just looking to get someone part-time. Follow those 7 steps and go through them. If you have momentum, you have capital, and you're already going through the process and you're really looking to develop out that team, now you have the choice where you can follow the steps, which all of us should do, and you can do that. But as you mentioned earlier, and one of a great thought leader in the business community, his name is Dan Sullivan, And he has a phrase called who, not how. And so, as we're busy growing our businesses, we can carve time out of our day and go through all of these steps ourselves, which is great to have a formula, but it's also might not be our expertise. And so there are companies like yours that can be the company that can go through, that's already tried and true and figured those pieces out. And so for you as a listener, you can follow this formula, or you can go and lean on an expert and have them help you.
Yeah, and one step that could even take the listeners further is that I offer a free consultation, a free strategy call. So if you feel like you need help in figuring this stuff out, I'll be happy to jump on the call. Whether we end up working or not, that's totally fine by me, either way. But I'll give you a free consultation, and we can walk through this together and see how it applies to your specific company, your specific position that you're hiring for. So if you're interested in that, head down to RecruiterMill and get started.
Cool, perfect. We'll put that in the show notes, recruitermill.com. So they can go and schedule that. For you listeners, I'm not compensated. This isn't a paid podcast. This is me having a conversation. I get requests all the time, and we have gone through and filtered out who we think are the best people as well. And so that's why we're having this today. So thank you for being on the show with me today. It was a great conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.